Hi, welcome to Creative Real Estate Ownership. I'm Josh Silverman, speaking to you today from Kai Real Estate in Berkeley, California. Today's episode is tariffs, rates, and inventory. Oh my! So I'm going to be talking about some obviously items in the news that we're all hearing about and how it affects the local housing market here in Northern California. So today I wanted to talk about a few things that are happening kind of on the national macro level. Specifically tariffs and how that affects the housing market here in California. And it's also related to interest rates. So tariffs have a direct impact on interest rates and how that affects the housing market here. And then a third piece of this is to discuss inventory in California and the amount of housing that is being built, the amount of existing homes that are trading, owners, and how all those three things are kind of combining to create a difficult housing market here in California. So I don't want this to be a message of doom and gloom that we're, this is all awful, everybody needs to batten down the hatch and pull all your money out of the stock market and like that. There's always opportunities in every market to be creative, to be a part of the owning real estate in even the most expensive regions like we're in the Bay Area here. But this administration is putting pressure on the housing market in California. And I just wanted to kind of discuss a couple of ways that's happening. And so the first, obviously, is tariffs. And so, we've been hearing a ton about tariffs in the news. There's these massive, anywhere from 10% up to 34% tariffs that the administration is putting on foreign governments and on foreign goods, I should say. And so these tariffs obviously have an impact on housing. And so one article that really kind of caught my attention was in the New York Times. And they wrote an article called "How Would We Build Homes Without Immigrant Labor and Foreign Materials?" And so in addition to there being these huge tariffs on materials coming from foreign countries, there's also this crackdown on immigration. And so we're having less people come into the country, both legal and illegally, due to this crackdown. And that's reducing the labor supply. In California, in construction, we have a huge population coming from south of the border, from Latin America. And when that gets squeezed, the labor market gets squeezed, and it essentially costs more to employ folks. It's harder to find people. Projects get slowed down. And so in addition to the tariffs making goods from foreign countries more expensive to build these houses, we also have a kind of a squeeze on employment and on essentially a labor shortage, right? It's happening simultaneously. So in speaking about tariffs, there's the biggest direct impact is on new construction, right? So you have all these materials coming from abroad and they're being taxed, right? Essentially a tariff is a tax on the buyer. So it's essentially being paid by American consumers, whether it be the builder who, the person importing the good pays the tax and they pass that on to the end user, the buyer, the consumer. And so we're paying for these tariffs. The idea is that you eventually shift production, or you shift the origin of these goods from abroad to, you start manufacturing at home and you don't have to pay that tariff anymore. But that's a very long-term process, and there's various opinions in terms of how easy that is to do and how even is it possible for certain materials and certain goods to be manufactured domestically as opposed to abroad. But that's kind of a different point. So anyway, so with tariffs in home building, you have this new cost, this new tax. And there's this article that really did a good job of kind of explaining the potential for how this will affect home building and the cost of home building. Now in California, the majority of our stock is existing homes, right? The majority of sales are existing, but 13% of all homes sold in California are brand new construction. So it's a big chunk of the stock is new. And so with this stock, you're going to have these two pressures happening simultaneously. You're going to have a labor shortage potentially, and you're going to have this increase in the cost to build a house. So labor and material costs going up. In this article by the New York Times, they averaged out to be about, between labor and material costs, about 18% increase in cost to build a home. You know, they didn't separate, you know, again, it was just immigrant labor. They didn't separate whether it was documented or undocumented folks here. But an 18% increase in the cost to build is huge. And so for a person like myself who's trying to build kind of small scale development, middle housing, an 18% increase in my costs is in many ways reflects kind of the profit margin that I'm working on. And so it's a big deal. It's definitely gonna, if it comes out to being, with these two pressures being put on builders, an 18% increase, that's gonna have a real impact on the ability for us to build new housing. We're still very short of our goals to reach where, you know, the state thinks we need to be. According to Cal Matters, in 2024, we added about 115,000 units, but our stated goal with Governor Newsom is about 300,000 units. So we're not even hitting half of our goals. And so essentially these tariffs and a labor shortage, and, you know, I'm not going to get into, you know, there's kind of a larger issue related to the labor shortage, and I'm not really going to get into that today, but there's ways that we can have documented workers, immigrant labor come in and fill jobs, as well as people that are currently here. There's room for both, but, you know, that's going to be kind of a topic for another time. But essentially these tariffs are not great for building. The second piece, the tariffs put pressure on interest rates. When there's kind of like a shift in the supply of materials, right? So if you're saying, okay, there's a 34% tariff on goods coming from China, I'm gonna buy from someone else. When you go and buy from somebody else, you're driving demand for that other product, and that raises the price of that other product, right? And so what happens with these tariffs as you shift this demand around is you potentially have inflation, right? And so the raising of prices across the board is inflation, and the Federal Reserve has one tool to deal with inflation. And what is that? They have to raise interest rates so that they decrease demand, right? So you decrease demand and get those prices to come down, but interest rates are going up, right? So again, that's kind of the result of a possible result of the tariffs. And you know, this is a moving scenario, and these numbers are going to change. But this is just kind of look at, you know, where this can go. So as we're trying to get out of this inflationary period we've been in, these don't do us any favors, right? And so interest rates are projected to hover in the mid sixes for all of 2025 and into 2026 as well. And so there's not, you know, I think there's some expectation of drops, but that may be out the door with the tariff issues, right? And so if they see that inflation going up, they might have to keep rates high or even spike them even higher. So that's not a good situation they're in. The Federal Reserve, you know, the conundrum they're going to be in is they can, you know, raise the rates to curb inflation. But if there's if the tariffs cause a reduction in growth, a slowdown in the economy, right, then they're going to want to lower the interest rates to spike demand again. So they're going to be kind of pushed between these two ends, and it leaves us as home buyers, homeowners, people wanting to refi in kind of this state of unpredictability, and then what's looking like, you know, pretty stable interest rates, and I'd love to see them in the fives, but it looks like we're going to stay in the sixes for quite a while. So that's kind of the interrelation of you know, tariffs and interest rates. So not a great picture there. speaking of inventory, so one thing that's interesting about inventory is that in 2024, so looking nationally, pre-pandemic, so talking 2019, the number of homes that were sold were roughly 5 million. 5 million homes sold per year. Come 2024, that number dropped down to 4 million. So over a 5-year period, you're seeing a huge drop in annual sales, like a 20% drop. The drop from 2019 to now in California was actually 27%. So nationally 20%, California even higher. And so because we're not building enough housing and prices are staying high, so interest rates are high, prices staying high, less movement in the market, right? And so like less buyers able to kind of get off the sidelines and buy, sellers not willing to, maybe they're locked into lower interest rates. And so you have that lock-in effect from the when rates were really low during the pandemic. And so you have this kind of this market that's a little bit stuck, right? There's just not enough houses coming on the market to kind of bring those prices down, and the interest rates aren't coming down, and so we're kind of stuck in this high price, high interest rate environment. Essentially, there's just not enough houses still. So we still need to kind of build our way out of this. With the interest rates being, we had such a shock, right? When we went through the pandemic, we were all the way down into like 3% interest rates, right? And sometimes even lower. And then we spiked all the way up to 8%, right? And so that swing just had a, huge impact on the market, right? And so it created this flurry of buyers and this flood of, inventory, and people were selling and buying at huge numbers. And then that kind of locked up. And then you have this period where we've come out of it. Now we're in this high interest rate environment. It froze up buyers. It made affordability more problematic. And you had just not enough trades happening, not enough buying and selling happening. And so those the prices are staying high, and interest rates are staying high. So again, I'm not wanting this to be super doom and gloom. There are, it's still historically relatively low interest rates. We're doing deals with our clients all the time. There's still transactions happening, but it is a market that is difficult for housing right now. And when I'm looking at projects to build and do some kind of urban infill projects, which I'm most interested in, these prices, the price of goods, the price of labor going up, it's not great. So in conclusion, yes, this is a challenging time, but we've been through many challenging times before in this country, and we can kind of weather this as well. My solutions for these issues are the same solutions I have for that you'll hear throughout this show, and it's just being creative. So co-ownership, multifamily, building an ADU, different ways to kind of be in the market, stay in the market, and then transition over time into something that works even better for you down the road. So there's not a need for an immediate shift in your strategy or thinking. It's just knowing that there's some forces out there that are trying right now, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help, and please reach out to me. And I love talking about these things. I love trying to help people get through these kind of complex issues. I want you to stay in the Bay Area. That's a big thing, obviously. So hit me up, email, and buy, build, and manage with love, and the rest will work out. Thanks for joining.